Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on AePS. And first, let me thank GFF for arranging this session. I hope the screens are visible and the PPT is visible. Let me start. So before the AePS, starting of AePS as a payment system.
Mr. Parekh,
Yes.
first I'll be welcoming all our attendees. I'll be introducing
Okay.
you, and then we'll be starting with the session.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, sir. So
Yeah.
once I'm done with the introduction, and I you take over from there. So just take a break of 10 seconds, and then you can start.
Sure.
Okay, sir. All
Got
right,
it.
sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good. Dear delegates, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all to the third edition of the world's largest Fintech Fest, Global Fintech Fest, organized by National Payments Corporation of India, Payments Council of India, and Fintech Convergence Council. This edition of the fest is supported by the Department of Economic Affairs, RBI, and IFSCA. My name is Amna Agarwal. Well, I will be the host of the session. So, dear attendees, the topic of our discussion is Product Masterclass, AePS, and eKYC. So, this is a part of the masterclass session. We're very glad to have an esteemed speaker lined up for the same. We have with us today Mr. Abhay Parekh joining us virtually. So Mr. Abhay Parekh is Head AePS, NFS and Market Initiatives, National Payments Corporation of India. We would like to take a few questions at the end of the session, so we request all our attendees to please post your questions in the chat box window. So now, dear attendees, please join me in welcoming Mr. Abhay Parekh, who will take over from here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, good evening. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for joining the session on AePS and eKYC. So let us start. So before AePS and eKYC started, which is on the base of Aadhaar authentication, let me give some background. So most of the you would be aware, but just to refresh our memories. So Aadhaar was launched in 2010. Authentication service they started in February 12 and eKYC in May 13. Once this was available for authentication, then Aadhaar was available to identify the individuals. The AePS system per se could take a base on it from the authentication standpoint, the identification standpoint, and allow the customers to do banking transactions. eKYC further helped customers to do KYC using Aadhaar-based authentication. So from the services standpoint, UIDI authentication services, one is the Aadhaar authentication, where fingerprint, iris, face auth, which is started now, and OTP is used to give a yes/no response whether the Aadhaar number and the input of fingerprint, iris, face, or the OTP entered, which is sent to the registered mobile number with UIDI, is correct and it is matching, then yes or no response comes from UIDI. Then there is an eKYC service where basis the authentication, the details of the resident, which is updated in UIDI CIDR, are responded back. There is also a demographic authentication, which is done by the institutions, basis the information which you must have given, and basis your Aadhaar number, the institution can check the name, date of birth, gender, etc., which is there in CIDR. Right from this, making it as a base, the AePS platform was available to the banks to the banks in start and now non-banking entities as well to perform banking services and for onboarding customers through eKYC. What AePS solves is the authentication, the identity of a person, and authenticate that the same person is available when the transaction is being initiated. The accessibility in terms of two things, I would say. One is the actual accessibility. It is an assisted mode available at most of the places in the country now. The the regions where earlier banking channels are not there, AePS have helped those locations to be covered through Bank Mitra or BC, as we say. More importantly, it is also helping the residents to access their bank accounts and utilize the funds. That is where I want to just stress upon. Availability, as I said, is available across the country through Bank Mitras or BC network. And from the affordability side, see if we see any payment system, the form factor is available is made used for identifying the person and then for the authentication of the transactions, right? But in Aadhaar based authentication, the individual person itself is an identity and Aadhaar number or BID is used as an identity to match, and only the person's biometric is used for authentication and not having the cost associated with multiple things from the customer side and form of device or form factor. Let us now see what are the services available made available through AePS to the banks which are members of AePS from the banking standpoint and to non-banks from eKYC standpoint. So cash withdrawal and deposit, that is the cash in, cash out. This is the main function which is made available through AePS channel, and banks and their BC points or bank mitras take a good advantage of making the amount available in the bank account accessible and can be withdrawn or deposit to credit account through bank mitras or BC agents. Then there is a fund transfer available, Aadhaar to Aadhaar fund transfer. The important one, which is there from the purchase side or payment side, most of the time we have seen it is mostly the digital form in terms of cards or in terms of online and now UPI and other channels were used for doing purchase transactions when it comes to digital banking, right? Or digital payments, I would say. Bhim Aadhaar Pay is one of the form where the device or a form factor or a card is not required, only the person's Aadhaar number VID acts as an identity and a transaction can happen, right? So there are some use cases which we envisage can be used, can be pursued using Bhim Aadhaar Pay. Some of the use cases which are already working on ground, though the numbers are few, but yes, it is our success stories in terms of EMI collections. The MFIs use the Bhim Aadhaar Pay as a functionality for their agents, which visits those small-time borrowers for getting the EMI collection. The medical shops, the rural retailers are some of the use cases currently being explored. Multiple other use cases are there which can be explored, and we are wanting to work with banks and fintechs to have this use cases rolled out in those markets where still cash is prominent. The next use case is on the knowing the amount available in a customer's account, mini statement for knowing the transactions. Then there is an important service of authentication and demo auth, an NPCI AePS service acts as a ASA KSA for helping the AUAs or the banks who are part of UIDI AUA to do a authentication using NPCI as one of our ASA. Very important one is eKYC, which has helped reduce the effort, time, and money for the institutions to do KYC. So eKYC using Aadhaar-based authentication has been growing tremendously. And there are two ways in which the CIDR system can be accessed. So UIDI appoints KSAs like NPCI, and we have KUAs. right? The KUAs are KYC user agency, which uses this service through their branch network or through their direct sale agents. Those who visits the customers whom they want to onboard, the clients whom they want to onboard, or the existing customers to do their re-KYC. Then there is a model where KUAs can also support the sub KUAs. So there are KUAs who are large enough and directly having engagement with the UIDI through KSA like NPCI. They connect with CIDR system and does the eKYC. They can further appoint sub KUAs who are notified by the DOR. So apart from government entities, telco, banks, other entities, once they are notified, they can use eKYC service, and this is one of the model through which it can be onboarded. Tokenization has played a role when there was a regulation to have the Aadhaar number to not be available in plain text in the system, CBS system, and Aadhaar data vault was a requirement. At that time, the tokenization was introduced. So any requesting entity doing an Aadhaar authentication can create a token, and that is used and stored for as a reference to identifying the actual Aadhaar and the account mapped to it. Then there are other services like best finger detection, Aadhaar seeding status, etc., which AePS channel supports. On left hand side, if you see on the screen, there is one picture just to show how this is actually helping when people are not able to visit their bank branches, not able to travel. These uh, BC agents or bank mitras really play a great role in having the customers access the bank account and at the time of need. So how it all started? It started with an aim to support financial inclusion. Then PMJDY came, and this has made a drastic change. As of today, if we see 134 crore residents are having Aadhaar, there are more than 46 crore account holders under PMJDY, and from those who are having Aadhaar, more than 74 crore people have mapped their Aadhaar with the bank, and it is available in the mapper. Now, this has helped in DBT transfers. It has helped in government putting amount directly into the bank account, and AePS channel is being used to get that access to that amount which has been credited to the customers. Uh, eKYC Bhim Aadhaar we started in 1617, and if we see what use case, what was created from financial inclusion standpoint has really helped when there was COVID-19. If we see in the first quarter, the lockdown was declared in March last week, if I remember correctly, last week in 2020, and there was a full lockdown. People were struggling to, even if they have to visit a branch to access their funds, the it was for a month or so, there was absolute zero movement or very near zero movement of people, right? At that point in time, and when government was also started sharing the amount, crediting the amount through DBT, at that point in time, there was a real requirement of people getting access to the funds for their day-to-day livelihood. And this is the time when really AePS, which was a platform which was over a period grown in terms of a motive of financial inclusion, has helped. 1.2 billion transactions through AePS channel, both honors and offers were done. 22 crore plus customers were served in that quarter, allowing them to withdraw more than 51,000 crore from their bank accounts. And this was done by people, more than 20 lakh agents on street, on foot, reaching out to the customers who were in need of money at during this quarter. And after this, there was no going back. And the AePS channel used by banks, it is a bank-led model used by banks through BC channel and Bank Mitra has just been growing. If you see today in last financial year, we have been able to help serve 40 crore plus customers having an average withdrawal of 25,000 crore in interoperable transactions, 30 lakh terminals on monthly basis. These are the touch points which are there, and more than 4 billion transactions. So this shows that AePS, which was a channel earlier with a mindset of having the financial inclusion drive achieved and to include all customers of the banks, and after PMJDY having residents have most of the residents having the bank accounts to reach it. This was started with financial inclusion, but now if we see, it has become one of the way of banking. From financial inclusion, it has converted into inclusive banking, and we see not only the PMJDY customers, not only the basic saving bank deposit account customers, but normal customers who have seeded Aadhaar in their account, using Aadhaar as one of the medium to identify and authenticate himself or herself to avail banking services through these touch points. Now let us see an indicative transaction flow, how the AePS model works. So for example, I have taken one of the Bhim Aadhaar K use cases and at a merchant outlet. So a person visits a merchant outlet for any goods or want to do a payment. On an application, the merchant would ask for the bank where the account is there, where the Aadhaar number is seeded, which a person wants to use for doing the payment. Aadhaar number is entered. Here, not only the Aadhaar number, VID, that is virtual ID, which is a temporary number which a resident can create using a UIDI services, can also be used. And there is also a security in terms of locking the authentication and unlocking it. So in a very secured way, these things can work. Once the amount is entered, Aadhaar number is entered, bank is selected, or a VID is entered, bank is selected, then the resident's consent is taken to use their fingerprint to authenticate himself. Once the authentication data is captured, the transaction is then initiated from the terminal. It reaches the merchant banks, that is acquiring bank switch, then reaches the AePS. From AePS, we connect with UIDI, CIDR to do the authentication. Suppose there is a failure, then the message is sent back as a failure, and the customer may want to recheck the details or want to retry it. If the transaction is success, that is the authentication is successful from UIDI, it goes to the issuer bank, that is the customer bank. Account balance is checked, amount is debited, and a message is returned. While the message is returned, the merchant bank also credits the merchant account, which is there in the same bank, or an notional account through which the merchant payments can be then paid to the merchant, and the transaction gets completed. The flow typically looks like any POS transaction, but the important factor over here is there is no form factor involved, no card involved. Person himself with Aadhaar or VID is his identity and biometric for authentication, right? So this is how Bhim Aadhaar Pay works. Now let us see one case on eKYC using OTP. Again, via Aadhaar or VID number is entered, and once that thing is done, the message is sent to the bank switch. From there, it reaches to NPCI as a KSA. We connect with CIDR, get the OTP. So the customer gets the OTP from the mobile number which has been registered at a CIDR, that is with UIDI. Once the OTP is entered, the flow starts again from the terminal. It goes to the switch, then NPCI, UIDI, and the demographic details are shared. Once demographic details are shared, the message is populated on the terminal or on the device of the transaction eKYC getting completed. The eKYC data is then shared to the database, which can be referred for checking the status. So this is how the Bhim Aadhaar Pay works. So if you say Bhim Aadhaar Pay or eKYC, any purchase transaction also works like that. In cash deposit transaction, we have initiated one more leg where the validation happens first and the deposit leg is an advice message which goes second, right? So let us see a business model, how it works on a typical model where corporate BC or a CSP is there, right? So the transactions, as I shown, it gets completed, and this is the model of a cash withdrawal. The interchange is being paid by the customer bank to the acquire bank. Acquire bank shares some part of the interchange, that is the earning for the transaction which has come. to the corporate BC, who then further shares with the agent, the CSP agent, which is at the ground, right? There are models where acquire bank directly appoints a BC, right, CSP point, and where the corporate BC is not involved and the sharing happens as such. The switching fees are paid by the issuer bank, and issuer bank also pays the other authentication charges to UIDI. This is a typical flow where transaction amount and the revenue flows. Let us see a model of a Bhim Aadhaar Pay, that is a merchant payment, where the amount deducted from the payment done to the merchant is shared with the aggregator or a fintech with the acquiring bank, and acquiring bank then pays some part as interchange to the issuer. It is same like any purchase transaction where interchange earns is earned by issuer and share is earned by the acquirer for getting merchant onboarded. Merchant gets an ability to get the transaction completed using Aadhaar-based authentication without the hassles of handling cash. So these are the points which can be looked upon from the merchant payment side. Uh, Now let me move to call out what is being in focus right now on AePS platform as such. So AePS is migrating from ISO to XML. This is a common code used for multiple NPCI platforms. It will be more versatile in terms of changes which are required for accommodating more new use cases. Very important part is the last bullet, which calls for having a higher data carrying capacity to capture FMR and FIR, which is a UIDI mandate as well to address the risk issues, fraud issues of gummy finger or a fake fingerprint. So now we are understanding the ecosystem have geared up, and in a month or so, most of the transactions would happen with FMR FIR. There is another use case which we are working on, that is on dual authentication. This would be the first digital payment authentication method where two individuals who are having a joint operating of a bank account would be able to use dual authentication basis Aadhaar based biometric authentication to validate a transaction for cash withdrawal, to identify our account for cash deposit. We shall be working on this very closely with few of the banks to start with on SAG, that is self-help group, for dual authentication. Once this is successful, more use cases can be incorporated. Very important part on face authentication. UIDI have introduced face authentication. It can be operable on any general Android phone, and the important part is the RD services are given by the UIDI itself. Currently, we have started with some of the banks to do eKYC at initial level and non-financial transactions. After seeing the experience and the confidence on other authentication, more use cases, including financial, can be added. Another important part is on the coverage side. We are looking at enabling more touch points for cash deposits, more banks for allowing cash deposits, eKYC services for non-banking entities. So these are some of the focus points which on AePS platform. So we would be working with the ecosystem. The sub AUA model for onboarding cooperative banks. So a bank who is already a AUA of UIDI would onboard another bank as a sub AUA. This would work well for DCCBs and state cooperative banks. We have already two entities with their DCCBs live. Important to build trust, to build so much trust in terms of the usage for the ecosystem as well as the resident, and we'll be working on it. Setting up active as a setup to avoid downtimes and online dispute solution. So these are things which are in progress and we are working. Some of them are already there. We are much improving it on the platform so that it can be further used by the ecosystem. So where fintechs can contribute, right? So AePS channel platform is there. Bhim Aadhaar Pay merchant solution is there to take care of those locations, those merchants, those use cases where still cash is prominent and the residents will take some time to graduate to other forms, factors of payment. So this can be explored. Face authentication, banks and entities would be looking forward for solutions on face authentications. dual authentication, as I touched upon earlier, and how more Aadhaar can be leveraged further to serve the citizens. These are some of the things where we see along with ecosystem we can do wonders and we can leverage further on Aadhaar-based authentication. So I'm resting myself here and happy to take for queries if it's there so that I can address it. You can use the chat which is available for putting your queries. So one question is there on sub KUA. So any KUA which is already connected to UIDI, they can allow any entity to become a sub KUA. Only the mandatory condition is that those entities should be notified by Department of Revenue to do eKYC services using the channel which is available. They are notified under PLMA Act by Department of Revenue. So I'll skip one question on collaborating with banks. So in NPCI, we have more than 1,000 plus member banks, and we are collaborating with them. And I would suggest you can connect with us if there are any opportunities which you foresee. We can help you connect with some of the banks. Yes, they are very open and really. So there are, as I explained, so this is a response to one question: were they open to such new ideas to be implemented? Yes, very much. In fact, there are three authentication mode: the yes no authentication, as I explained, and eKYC. Using this authentication mode and the regulatory approvals, we can definitely move for more use cases. And I'm saying Bhim Aadhaar Pay, very few use cases are still explored. There is really a time that we explore that and work towards it. Do let me know any other queries are there on the chat. Thank you. I think if there are no more queries, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Parekh, for such knowledgeable masterclass session. That was quite enlightening for all our attendees. So I think you have also answered the questions. Thank you so much for that. And with this, we would like to bring this session to an end. So it was quite engaging for all our attendees to be a part of this masterclass. And once again, I would like to thank our esteemed speaker for sharing your knowledge with us. It was an honor to have you at Global Fintech Fest 2022.
Thanks, my pleasure. Thank you all for joining.
With this, we would like to thank our partners, Team Partner WhatsApp, co-powered by Amazon Pay, Spend Management Partner Encash, in association with Perfios, Payments Partner Cash Free Payments, CEO's Dinners Partner HSBC, Platinum Partner Google Pay, PhonePe, M2P FinTech, MasterCard, Falcon, Registration Partner NTT Data Payment Services. So we'll be starting with the next session soon. Thank you, Mr. Parekh, once again.
Thank you.